with 1031 Property Exchange, and we're on to part 5, using 1031 exchanges to grow your real estate wealth. So let's just go ahead and get. So proper exchange documentation. To perform a 1031 exchange, you've got to have a 1031 exchange agreement. Now that's made between the exchanger and the qualified intermediary, which is us. This agreement contains all the necessary language to comply with safe harbor regulations. You also have to have a 1031 exchange escrow agreement, and that's an agreement between the qualified intermediary and the escrow agent. Then you have to have a 1031 exchange addendum and assignment, and that's between the qualified intermediary, the exchanger, and the buyer of the relinquished property. A similar addendum and assignment is also filed for the replacement property, so you've got to have an addendum and assignment. The 45-day identification letter, now this identifies the replacement properties and is sent to you, the exchanger, by us, the intermediary. And then you've got to have a 1031 exchange settlement sheet. It's like a regular settlement sheet, but it has some modifications for exchanges. In other words, it's the HUD-1 document. Other documentation included an affidavit of disclosure of non-foreign status. This has been required for exchanges for several decades now. While not required by IRC 1031, what it does is it protects you, the exchanger, from the 10% withholding requirement that's required for foreign citizens. So that's one of the reasons we filed that. You also have to have a 1031 exchange or settlement sheet for the replacement property, as we discussed earlier. And then the Patriot Act now requires, and this is new within the last 10 years, it requires a copy of the exchanger's driver's license be submitted with every exchange. So, proper escrow procedures. Only use a qualified intermediary as an escrow agent if they meet the following 3 requirements. Now, this is for the safety of your money. 1, they use a federally insured bank, and that's important just because you've got the FDIC coverage. 2, they have procedures that require written escrow authorization forms signed by you, and that, you know, their escrow bank requires this form in writing prior to releasing any funds. And that's the way we have it set up. It's just the best way to set it up because you just don't have any possibility whatsoever of any lack of fiduciary responsibility. Number 3, they perform all funds transfers by direct wire or deposit to and from the closing title company. Now, if you have those 3 procedures in place, the chances of any wrongdoing are almost slim and none. In the hundreds of exchanges we've performed, we've never had any kind of fiduciary or errors and omissions claims. So that in and of itself speaks for itself. Okay, the 1031 exchange holding requirement. The relinquished property and replacement properties must be held for business and investment use. You must use the property for your business as rental property or as an investment like land. You must not use the properties for personal use. The exception, you got the 14-day or the 10% exception under the vacation homes provision of IRC 280A. And as we said before, you can get up to 4 weeks if you use documentation to log the marketing and maintenance visits you have on a property. You must not hold property as inventory for immediate sale. In other words, you don't want to be a dealer. You've got to try and show compliance with that 2-year holding time frame. And you should not hold the properties primarily for sale with a pre-intent to sell. And that goes all the way back to the Supreme Court decision 1960 of Ethel Black. Number 6, according to the IRS, you must hold the replacement property for a period of at least 1 to 2 years. 2 is better to approve intent. And if you don't want to get audited and end up having your exchange disqualified, we always recommend 2 years. 7, according to the IRS, there should be a consistency of ownership from the relinquished property to replacement property without any changes for a 1 to 2 year period. So in other words, if you buy a replacement property and it's held in the name of, John Doe, you don't want to all of a sudden change the registration to the John Doe Trust during that 2 year period. You want to wait till that 2 years is up. So just don't have any registration changes. The holding requirement, according to the IRS, there has to be that consistency of ownership from relinquished to replacement without any changes. And, just don't change that ownership as we discussed. It means placing the property in a trust, buying interests of another tenant in common, or or any conceivable form of registration change. The one or the couple exceptions would be death or divorce, and those things are explicable, so not a problem. Time requirements. You have the 45-day identification period. The exchange is giving until midnight of the 45th day following the sale of the replacement property in order to identify replacement property. And that should say relinquished property in order to identify replacement property. So sorry about that error. Warning, there are no exceptions to this rule, and weekends and holidays do count. So if your 45th day falls on a Saturday or Sunday or on a holiday, you got to make sure you get the identification document sent to us, and that way we can timestamp, and our email inbox works as a timestamp. 180-day total exchange period. It's the total time period from the beginning date of the sale of the relinquished property. And these two dates run concurrently. The first 45 days of the exchange period is the identification period, and then the remaining days make up the total of the 180-day period. And they, as I said here, both periods run concurrently. Okay, so can you sail outside the safe harbors on 1031 with respect to time requirements in an exchange? Well, the answer is yes, plenty of people have done it, but the 45-day identification and designation rule has no exceptions. The 180-day total exchange period rule doesn't have exceptions, but often reverse exchanges do extend beyond the 180-day total exchange period. And if the IRS doesn't audit the exchange, or even if they do audit it, it might be allowed to stand. Then again, they could disallow it, and that's the risk of going outside the safe harbor. So, on to part 6, and in part 6 what we'll discuss is identification rules, boot, and how to choose a qualified intermediary. So we're almost there. Thanks for sticking with us, and we hope you're learning a lot and learning some things that will help benefit you when you do a 1031 exchange. If you'd like to call us for a free consultation, our phone number is listed right here, area code 406-425-2742, or visit our website at www.1031property.exchange. And you're also welcome to email me. This is Russ Squire for 1031 Property Exchange, and thanks for your attention.